Hello everybody, Jim from Ohio here, and as you can see, we've got a bit of an excavation project taking place at our the newer house that we moved into last December. This is actually where our garden was just a few weeks ago, and we ended up having to fill it in with soil. The person who used this as a garden before really let it go, and they never added anything back to the soil every year. They simply tilled it, and because of some flood issues that we've got in the area, all the soil just washed out into the ditch that's behind our house. And actually on this side where the garden started, it actually dropped down about 10 or 11 inches, and then over on this side it dropped down almost a foot. But I'll kind of walk through and show you what we've got going on here, and I'll post some video that I took earlier in the year, actually in the springtime, when we had some flooding take place. Here, but well, let's just start at the kind of the front of the house, and we'll kind of explain it as we go. Around here, I'm on the side of the pole barn right now, moving over towards the front of the house. You can see right here that we had a new section of driveway poured, and actually that new section of driveway goes into the garage about 10 feet. But we live on a hillside that slopes from the road all the way back to the back of our property, and so the ditch is the low spot, and then the valley or the land goes back up right there. But what was happening is water was rushing down the driveway, and it had nowhere to go. And what it would do is it would run off on that side of the driveway, and you can see that our sidewalk going up to the front door is on an angle. What would happen is when the water came down the driveway, since it had nowhere to go, it would either go on that side of the driveway, or it would come on this side of the driveway and run down this little strip between the house and the pole barn. And what was happening is everything was sinking, and the ground was totally saturated. We had huge cracks in the garage floor, and actually where this this tower is between the two garage doors, it was totally rotted out at the bottom, and this whole section had sunken down. What we did to remedy that issue is we had this section of driveway poured. We replaced some of the damaged garage floor, and we had this trench drain put in. And so now what happens is when water comes down the driveway, it goes into this drain, and there's a drain tile now that runs around the front of our house, and it comes out on the other side, and we'll get around to that in just a moment. But also, because the yard was sloped, and you can see we have a slightly sloped driveway here in front of the barn, the water will come down the yard or down the driveway and kind of slope over in this direction. And this is a low spot, so water cannot get into the pole barn. But the previous owner did have a drain that was put in right here, and this drain comes around to the side of the house, And then it links up with the downspouts. He has a French drain for this downspout and the downspout down here. But instead of taking that to the ditch where it should have gone, what he did was, when it links up to this drain, he had a piece of underground PVC that simply comes across the yard, and then it pops up right here. It goes nowhere else. And so what was happening is when the water would come up through this drain, it would pond in this area right here, and when it got so deep, because the ground goes in this direction, it would run down the hill this way. And this was another section of the garden, and it was just washing all of the soil out, and that's why this valley right here was about a foot deep where it met up with the garden. So what we did, we came in with a backhoe, and we did dig a trench here, and so I do have a power cable, underground power cable, that comes from this pole, as well as my cable and internet line, and it comes across here. So we did have the underground power marked, and that's what this is. We actually located it underground, and this is a fiberglass rod that's sitting right on top of the conduit. But we found a couple old coax cable that was for old internet lines going to the house, but this one right here is the current one that feeds the house. And well, we had an accident. We located it, we dug it by hand and located it and dug out around it, but then when the excavator came in, he got a little bit too close to it with the bucket and snapped it. So we did have to splice that. We just cut out the bad cable and spliced in a new coax barrel plugs and tied in a new piece. And this is that black liquid electrical tape that's around it to seal it off. I'm probably going to put some of that flex tape or gorilla tape around it too, and then we'll rebury that. But anyway, what we're going to do now is we're going to do this right. We are going to have a surface drain here, so I've got a box that will cut this pipe off. We'll put in a box here that will capture any water that runs down, or any standing water will be able to run down this drain. But what will happen is we'll have a piece of PVC coming out of here, just some white 4-inch sewer line that will tie into the side of this drain box, and then it'll run it all the way down here and take it down to the ditch where it should have been going all along since the house was built. Now, we also had a major problem with the ditch, and as I mentioned, the video, hopefully I've posted that and you've seen that. But this ditch was like a raging white water rapids when we had a lot of water coming down. What was happening is, you see we have a hillside here, and the neighbors all have hillsides, and we've got this, the ditch kind of follows by that barn up here. It comes down this way and it snakes along, and then it comes up to the edge of our property right here. Well, you can see how this ditch right here that's probably about 3 feet deep, and this, you can actually tell that there's a ditch there. Well, what had happened with this section of the ditch, the entire length of our property, is over the years, as water has run down the hill, and as everybody's septic lines and all of the water that's coming off of the neighbor's property has been coming down this way, over the years the ditch eroded and the banks of the ditch caved in, and the previous owner did nothing about it. And since it had caved in and it was wet all the time, it started growing grass and vegetation. So all the way from this point that I'm standing clear over to there was all just mud and grass. And so anytime we needed to maintain it, we'd come out here. I couldn't drive my lawn tractor on it because it would just sink, but we had a 10-foot wide stretch from here to over there that would simply be a mud bog, and we would have to clean it off with a weed eater, and I would sink up to my shins in the mud trying to weed eat it. and it really got to be quite a challenge. So what we did, we came in and we created a V that is shallow enough that we should be able to come in and plant some grass and eventually just mow the entire ditch area, but keep it open so that we have a good water flow from one end of the property to the other. Now you can see we've got some more excavation going on right here, and what this is, we're not sure if it is an underground spring that's in this area, or if there's maybe a piece of bedrock that's under the garden that captures water. But what we found was this area right here was always really super muddy. It was always real soft, and even with the grass covering it, the water from the ditch didn't make it up this high, but we always had standing water here, and it was always just sloppy and muddy. And so what we're doing here is we got a piece of a drain tile that has kind of a sock and peanuts around it, and we're going to lay that in here so it should capture any standing water and then direct it down into the ditch. So that's what that section is. And then we've got another small section right here, and this is a 3-inch piece of black PVC, and what this does is it goes up to the corner of the house where the downspouts are on this side of the house, and it collects all the water and it brings it down here. Well, this was just like this pipe is, this was just laying on top of the ground, and he did have a piece of concrete on both sides of it so that if you ran over it with the mower, it wouldn't crush it. But because it was just laying on the surface like this, grass had grown over it, and actually I didn't even realize that this pipe was here for the first couple months that we lived in the house, and then I just found it one day. But what we're going to do is, now that we've kind of valleyed out the ditch, I'm going to extend this out. I've got a coupler and another piece of the black PVC pipe, and I bought a 22-degree elbow, and I'm going to direct it downward and then just run this pipe down so that it comes out closer to the end of the ditch, and I'll keep it down below the surface so that I can mow over this area, but where it comes out, I'll probably put one of those concrete basins that you normally put on your house where your downspouts come out. I'll put it there just to kind of keep that in place, and so we can keep track of where it is. But then down on this end of the yard, you can see I've got a white piece of PVC laying on the ground. And this was something that originally only about 2 inches of that pipe was exposed, and the rest of it was the ditch area that had eroded really bad. And what that is this is the French drain that collects the water from the downspouts on the house on this end. So what we're going to do is, I do see there's a section right here. We're going to probably just cut this off somewhere in this area, and I'll do the same thing. I'll put a concrete catchment area, and then we'll just hopefully be able to mow over this part too. But one of the things that when we had the driveway renovated or poured, and they put in the new tile and the drain at the base of the driveway, this is where the contractor ended when he pulled that tile around the house. And you can see we have 2 tiles that just pop up in the yard here. One of these is the trench drain from the driveway, and the other, because the front yard has kind of a small area that's low right in the middle of it, that you can see just to the left of this tree right here. We always had ponding right there in the front yard, and so what we did is we did put a piece of perforated drain tile there, and since we already had the contractor excavating over here, this was done earlier in the year. We've already have grass growing back, but a second piece of perforated pipe does come over, and that's what we have right here. But at the time, because it was so muddy in the yard and it was the rainy season, he really didn't want to run it all the way back to the ditch line, so we just concluded it right here. What we're going to do with this is we're going to put adapters on this to convert this to the same white PVC that you see down there, the regular standard 4-inch sewer line. We're gonna tie those together. We really don't have a ton of water that comes out of these, so I think I can safely join these into a single line. So I have a couple adapters to convert them over to, as I mentioned, the 4-inch sewer line, and then I have a Y adapter that I'll tie them in, and then we're gonna dig a ditch down through the yard, same as we did over there, and we'll get this water going down to the ditch so it's not in the yard. And then the final part of this puzzle, this was just a low spot in the yard, and since we had a lot of excess dirt from the ditch, we went ahead and filled the low spot in. But we do have our house is on a septic, and our septic line comes up over here. And this was something that was totally buried. Water was coming out through the ground, but it just was not being maintained. It wasn't installed properly from the start. And you can see that there's just a piece of black perforated, well, I guess it's perforated, but the black drain tile that sits here on the surface. So what we're going to do with this, it looks like it is not even round anymore. We're going to dig this section up, and we're going to tie a piece of the white rigid pipe in there just so that it doesn't crush. And we need to keep this flowing because this is our septic line coming out of the house. And so what we're going to do is tie that into a piece of white sewer line and angle it so that it comes down in this direction and comes out right here into the ditch. And we'll probably do one of those curb or a piece of concrete there too. So lots of work, lots of excavation been going on. The yard's been a total mess. Fortunately, we haven't had much rain throughout this entire project, so we've been able to get a lot of it done. We only got the tractor stuck a couple times, and fortunately we were able to get it out. Well, we'll keep everybody in tune to see how it all turns out. But I think we're going to start laying some pipe tomorrow. You can see how cloudy it is today. I'm hoping we don't get rain overnight. If we do, we might have to delay the laying of the pipe till another day. But lots going on here.